We are going live, sir.
Yes.
One good move makes all the difference. The best way to predict future is to create it. Take a move. Create a future. Join Shobhit University.
Good morning to the viewers of the international webinar series on open source digital technology towards self-reliant India, both in India and abroad. The Shobhit Institute of Engineering and Technology, Meerut, a NAC accredited deemed to be university, welcomes today's keynote speaker, Dr. Kamalesh Kumar Bajaj, is a distinguished technocrat of the country. Shobhit University has set up 4 centers of excellence: Center for Agricultural Informatics and E-Governance Research Studies to promote information technology through research, through extension program, through academic program, and skill development and entrepreneurial development of the rural boys and girls in agricultural development. Center for Excellence on Agribusiness and Disaster Management Studies. Center for Informatics Development Solutions and Application. And the 4th one is Center for Industry 4.0 Technology Studies and Application. Through these 4 centers, the Shobhit Institute of Engineering Technology based at Meerut would like to bring in technology-driven, data-driven development in rural areas. Today, the international webinar series on open source digital technology towards self-reliant India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, is being appreciated and viewed by participants from both in India and abroad. Under this international webinar series, this Center of Excellence, Center for Informatics Development Solutions and Application, has organized 5 lectures so far. Open Technologies to Provision, Simple and Economical IT Infrastructure, held on 12th September 2020, addressed by Dr. B. Balasubramanian, former Deputy Director General, National Informatics Center, Government of India, and Head NIC Open Technology Center, Chennai. The second one was on 18th September 2020 by Dr. B.K. Mishra, a roadmap for students using free and open source software and reaching goals of Atmanirbhar Bharat. The third one is on 25th September 2020 by Dr. H.K. Suhas, former Deputy Director General, National Informatics Center, on the topic Open Source Software and Industrial IoTs for Small and Medium Enterprises, SMEs. On 3rd October 2020, Mr. M.R. Rajagopalan, former Director, Center for Development of Advanced Computing, CDAC, Chennai, and the Director of National Resource Center on Free and Open Source Software, he talked about adoption and business models. On 10th October 2020, Mrs. Alka Mishra, Deputy Director General, Open Data Platform for Smart Digital Government. Today, we will have the talk by an eminent and distinguished technocrat of the country, Dr. Kamalesh Kumar Bajaj, on a very important topic: technology imperatives make it India for self-reliance. Dr. Kamalesh Bajaj was the founder CEO of Data Security Council of India, founder director, CERTIN, and he has established the techno-legal framework for public key infrastructure, PK, under the Information Technology Act in the country. His Other engagements included Global Head, Information Security Practice in TCS, and Deputy Director General, National Informatics Center. He started his software career with the CAE Electronics Limited, Montreal, Canada. Dr. Bajaj established Data Security Council of India as the lead agency in cybersecurity and privacy protection, with its footprint in India and abroad. He authored several important policy papers on security, privacy, internet governance, cyber crimes, and international regulations. Before that, he led certain in creating awareness in cybersecurity among the government organizations, including officers from the armed forces. Dr. Bajaj holds doctorate in physics from McMaster University, Canada, master's from University of Delhi. He is a fellow of National Academy of Science and fellow of IETE. Kamlesh is a distinguished fellow at the East-West Institute, a think tank based in United States. Today, Navaratri starts. From the university, we extend our Navaratri greetings to all our brothers and sisters in India and abroad. So far, the webinar series discussed in the area of open systems, open infrastructure, open source software for open infrastructure, open hardware for open infrastructure, open data platform, human resources development, startups in open technology, leading to open society, society 5.0, which will be facilitated by industry 4.0, example, pharma 4.0, textile 4.0, and agriculture 4.0. Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India, is the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, of making India a self-reliant nation, rested on 5 I's: intent, inclusion, investment, infrastructure, and innovation, and based on 5 pillars, namely economy, quantum jump, and not incremental; infrastructure, one that represents modern India; systems, 21st century technology driven; vibrant demography, source of energy for self-reliant India; and demand, whereby the strength of our demand and supply chain should be utilized to full capacity. This was announced on 15th May 2020 through a special and comprehensive economic package of rupees 20 lakh crore that accounts for 10% of India's GDP to bring back the economy back on track. The Honorable Prime Minister also announced Vocal for Local to make it global, a demand-based economy system which is self-producing and self-consuming. The reforms announced have been systematic, planned, integrated, interconnected, and futuristic for creating strong enterprises, generating employment, and a robust supply chain. This is our intent. Today's topic, technology imperatives for making it India self-reliant. To give a few words about this topic, technology has become a major competitive asset today. Role of technology in economic growth has grown relentlessly. Convergence of technology-based competitive capabilities among the world economies has drastically altered the required economic growth strategies in industrialized nations. Gregory Thase examines in his book titled Technology Imperative, published in 2007, how this convergence has created an imperative for new growth models and strategies. Digital India program aims to transform India into a knowledge-based economy and digitally empowered society. On 20th February 2019, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MeitY, published a report titled India's $1 trillion Digital Economy in collaboration with McKinsey Company. This report identified about 30 digital themes, if scaled up nationally, can accelerate India's progress in 9 key areas. Pandemic shifts work online. Digital technologies are vital to infuse speed, scale, security in governance, and to make governments more technologically functional. According to Dr. Kamalesh Kumar Bajaj, it is a time to re-examine Make in India. He's going to talk on seven important areas related to technology imperative, namely strategic nature of ICT products and services, standardization of products and services, global supply chain, ICT for economic growth and job creation, key challenges with respect to cybersecurity and trust in global supply chains, race for technology supremacy, and finally, technology imperatives for India. And he emphasized that there's a time to re-examine Make in India. What are the achievements in hardware, networking, software, and security products? Dr. Kamalesh Bajaj will present his views on the above points and make some recommendation in his talk. Dr. Kamalesh Kumar Bajaj, over to you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Moni. Can you hear me? I'm
yes.
Not muted. Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Moni. I'm very happy to be part of this series that you have organized. And I can see that a lot of eminent speakers have already participated in the program. And the kind of topics which have been covered, and especially the center that you are leading on information security, agricultural informatics, and related areas, is something which is of great importance to the country. So the something that I'm going to talk about is technology imperatives, and you have already touched upon part of this in terms of what I'm going to be presenting. So the topic which I have chosen as part of his Smart Digital Government Symposium is technology imperatives and how they are related to self-reliance in digital economy. Just a second. Yeah. Is it moving?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I will start now. As Professor Moni mentioned about the strategic nature of ICT products and services, I'd like to draw your views or your thought process to something which is related to the growth of economies and how the ICT differs from other industry sectors. Its contribution to GDP everywhere in the world is from 6 to 10%. Even in a country like United States, it is 6%, where the base of GDP is very high. And if you look at countries like ours, China claims about 25 to 30% growth in GDP is accounted by the ICT products and services. Other sectors, if you compare, are growing at the rate of 2 to 4%, the physical sectors. Although all the sectors are getting digitized. In fact, it is the digitization which is driving the race for the adoption of the industry. The entire businesses, e-commerce, banking, industrial world processes, and of course, we are seeing more and more of education and health during the pandemic which is underway. In the last 6 months, we have seen that our dependence, both in terms of e-commerce, banking, education, and health and governance. These in particular, the people at large have realized. It is not just the IT professionals, but everyone. And additionally, agriculture as well. In fact, interestingly, if you look at the growth of the internet traffic, it leads to the growth in GDP. And universally, it is seen that 10% increase in internet traffic increases GDP by about 1.3% globally. But for a country like India, a digital growing economy, so-called, the impact is much higher. It is about 3.3%. So which means that as we expand into digital economy, the growth in our internet traffic contributes more and more to the GDP. Now, why is this so? This is because there are ever powerful computing platforms which are emerging. And we have entered already the era of machine learning, artificial intelligence. And India, if you look at some of the figures, it is one of the big markets for data analytics, cloud computing, IoT, and machine-to-machine communications, which means industrial process automation. But then what is happening in the growth of the ICT industry, the adoption worldwide? There's a focus on standardization of products and services. We all know that there are basic internet protocols, TCP, IP, security protocols, IPsec, and so on. So the protocols are standards. Products and services have to conform to those standards, which means that if you develop standards and you implement those standards and you make your products and services conforming to those standards first, so you have a first mover advantage. So this first mover advantage belonged to the United States for a long time, and this position has been challenged over the last 5 to 7 years by China. So there are companies like Huawei and others which are now leading the global battle in this arena for controlling of standards. And this control of standards is by companies as well as by nations. So with the more and more digitization, what is happening? We are talking of data-driven innovation. Economies are growing on the strength of data, which is being generated by ever-connected IoT devices, all our mobiles, other devices that we are using, whether you're using video streaming, Netflix, Amazon Prime, or even just WhatsApp, social media applications, all of those are generating huge amounts of data. So on the one hand, there are data security and privacy protection issues. On the other hand, the growth which all this is leading to the economies. So there are studies done that in the year 2015 in India, data-driven innovation contributed about $10 billion to the economy. And in the current year, which will be ending, say, by March next year, the projection is that this figure should be about $50 billion. So artificial intelligence and machine learning making use of this data and data analytics, this is expected to raise GDP by 1.3% in 2025 in India. So you can see that there are factors which are at play in the entire technology, the way as we see it and the way as we actually implement it. And global data flows, I have a very old figure, sorry about that. Global data flows in the year 2014 contributed $2.8 trillion in the global economy. Now this figure, I hazard to guess that it should be much larger, but I could not lay my hands on the latest figures. But this gives an idea that while the global flows overall, they are about $7 to $8 trillion. Out of that, the data flows account for $3 trillion. Now, when we talk about products and services, and as I said, if you create standards, you create products around it, then you are the first mover advantage, you start controlling the economy. But then there's a global supply chain which is there. The products which are designed and developed, they could be designed in the United States, they could be developed further in some other lab in India, and then they could be manufactured in China, Japan, Taiwan, or South Korea. And the supply chains are such that if there's a very interesting example of the Apple phone. Some 200 components go in it, and these components are manufactured in, I think, about 45 to 50 countries. And then they get assembled in 5-6 plants in the, it used to be China, Japan, South Korea, and now India has added to that. So you can see that we are now at global supply chains in the entire manufacturing and IT product and services sector, which is what makes the products of very high quality and services which are affordable. So simple components are manufactured in bulk in specialized plants in various countries, then they are taken for assembly. So this supply chain is very efficient for businesses and administration because we are able to deliver cost-effective services to consumers and citizens. And at the same time, people can innovate. As I said, data-driven innovation is the key. And many of the startups in India also, they are there. And some of these are disruptive. Uber, for example, disruptive in the US and then throughout the world. And Zomato, the Indian application, which is a disruptive application in India, and many more have emerged, Swiggy and so on. Now they've created new jobs of different kinds. And then all of us humans, earlier, if you saw a delivery boy making certain delivery from the hotel or restaurant to your house, or e-commerce deliveries, so they have to learn to operate the technology. In his mobile platform, mobile device, he will have to enter that, okay, product delivered. And within a split second, you get to know that, you get a message that your product is delivered. And the company also comes to know that this particular thing has been done. And we are all used to it in terms of Amazon, Flipkart deliveries and so on. So which means that the humans are learning to work with intelligent, automated and robotized processes, and robotized more in the context of industries and other offices. So we are talking of reskilling of humans. All of these delivery persons also, and all of those at the counter selling point of sale terminals and within the restaurants, hotels, transport industry, airlines and so on. So they all are moving to use technology, which is what we say that digitization of business processes. In fact, there are studies which indicate that the digitization of MSMEs, those industries will constitute to something like 40% growth in the overall sales in the country. So I will not get into many of the figures. These figures are readily available and they can be shared also separately. But the point to be emphasized is that the ICT is important for the growth, not only for the industry per se, but industries around it, such as agriculture and health. So economic growth, job creation, which means, as I said, if we are talking about standards and development of products and services, which obviously leads you to think that there is some kind of a technology supremacy race in the cyberspace, as it should be. If we have seen in the physical areas, countries which were dominant in creation of, for example, aircraft, fighting vehicles and so on. So now we are seeing similar things in the cyberspace also. And it is more important from the viewpoint of national security, because militaries also require capabilities for cyber attacks, surveillance and espionage, just the way as in the physical world, the companies are engaging in that. So it is the technology which the physical companies are using for surveillance. We are all aware of when we talk about Facebook or Tencent applications from China and so on, or CCTV equipment. They serve a purpose. At the same time, they are the same tools which are meant for espionage and surveillance. So the sad part or the good part is that this entire technology is a dual use technology. So it is as much important for militaries and national security as it is important for the companies. And let us also remember today when we talk about national security includes economic security. So gone are the days, if you forget about what is happening on the LAC border with China. Otherwise, it is a war to gain economic supremacy. And nobody wants to come and colonize a country, and the colonization is only through the economic methods. But at the same time, as I said, because it is important for the militaries, so we are concerned about cybersecurity. Again, coming back to standards and algorithms are open. We know about RSA algorithm, but the implementation is different. It can be achieved in different ways, and the keys are important, and how to exchange keys, how to build keys, and so on. So there are programs for that. And encryption is controlled by companies. We are all aware of that, WhatsApp and so on, which provide end-to-end encryption for all the communications. Something which is required by the consumers, by all governance processes. But at the same time, the law enforcement also wants access to data, something which is being discussed throughout our country, and more so during the election time in the US and others, that whether through this kind of a process can even democracy be fully compromised. So these are issues which are there, which bring us to the point that the global supply chains which are there, efficiency, yes, but then the main question is the issue of trust. Do we trust the company? Do we trust the product? Or do we trust the country? So you go from the level of distrusting the product first, then distrusting the company, then distrusting the country where it has come from. But then remember, any product or services which is being built is based on supply chain. Even Huawei depends on chips coming from Intel and Qualcomm for making their products. So it's a very complicated world. The complexity is huge. But what adds an additional layer of problem is that there are national laws. And these national laws can force companies to share data. So if there is a law in China which says that any provider, if the government asks for in a certain case, they will have to share the data. So any data. So that is why we are concerned about all the, 58 apps that we banned, or 200 more that we banned. So it is these apps which are taking away the data, and data is critical for national security as well as for economic security. So companies are forced to help in surveillance of foreign citizens and governments when necessary. And let me add here that it is not merely China. It was the case which Snowden revealed in the case of US laws also, the Patriot Act and National Security Agency having access to global data. So it is something which is universal. India as a country, we are dependent either from the Western world or from the Chinese side. While data security and privacy protection, we know that they are getting compromised. So the question of control and trust in nations becomes important. So what do? We know that there are vulnerabilities in platforms. It could be in Explorer, it could be in Chrome, it could be at an application level, it could be at the browser level, it could be in the other kind of apps. So those sort of vulnerabilities could be exploited as backdoors to be installed at the behest of the governments. Something again which is nothing new. It has been happening earlier in the world also, from the Western side and from the Chinese side as well. So while we are having intense global debates on the question of trust in nations, but it is a very difficult issue and we do not know how to resolve it. And we have seen it in the case of Huawei and 5G rollout, the entire camp led by US, then the Western world gradually falling into line, including India. India, especially because of its geopolitical position, where we are situated right now with between, say, China and the kind of difficulties that we are facing at the border and otherwise. So distrust by democratic countries in products which are coming out of China. And now on this point, I would like to focus that sadly, COVID has shown our dependence more and more on ICT. For mere survival, we have seen that we have to depend more on e-commerce, more on e-health, monitoring, Arogya Setu, things like that. All kinds of apps which have been there for applications for education. In fact, the platform that we are currently using, Zoom itself, has been under the cloud for a long time. So I will move on. So the technology race is as I said, focus on indigenous development. And we are all seeing work from home solutions, networks, bandwidth challenges, and applications. And our focus, and not just India, but elsewhere in the world also, the focus is more on the core ICT infrastructure, networks, and applications. So core ICT infrastructure, what would you say? So the basic infrastructure, if you start from the power sector, because with power outage means telecom will also go away. So power as the basis, and then on that is the technology platform, the telecom platform. So telecom services, networks, and so on. So on the telecom networks, then we have built the IT infrastructure for every sector, whether it is banking, insurance companies, health sector, and so on. And then at the top layer, it is the innovative apps which are emerging. So nations have defined what constitutes core infrastructure, other than power, telecom, for example, banking, governance, and so on, health. So we could choose and decide. But then all these sectors, they require cybersecurity, both in products and services and at the app level. So society has seen, and we are still in the middle of that we need a video conferencing platform. It's a very data intensive application. And e-commerce platforms to deliver groceries, foods, and medicines, and government reliance for coordination and effective control of the population through police and so on. And of course, people in the lockdown mode now, forcefully getting into entertainment, video streaming platforms, gaming, online medical consultation, monitoring services, and education, a sector with which our friend Boni is directly connected, both at the university level as well as at the school level. And I can see now students around, even nursery students are sitting on the Zoom kind of sessions, or Teams, Microsoft Teams, and so on. So they're attending classes, whatever that may be. So they are becoming more and more part of the core infrastructure. How do we actually handle the bandwidth requirement and the technology platforms? Should they be ours? And then finally, the point is, under this lockdown learning, is the social media. Once again, something that we have been talking about, connecting people, for them to be able to pass their time because they can't move out. We are wanting them to sit at home. So they are more and more engaged on the messaging and video chatting. So apart from the positive influence, there are very many negative things, and I will touch upon some of these. So it is a digitization, business, governance, social processes, which in the pandemic is helping us cope as a society, and as the government also, as the industry. And we are seeing more and more public-private partnership emerging to provide solutions. Networks, we have reliability, bandwidth challenges, and we are coming up with more and more digital payment system solutions, drones for surveillance to monitor social distancing. So as I said, every technology with IT is a dual use technology. If you're wanting to do surveillance for monitoring social distancing, but then it is open to monitoring of any kind, surveillance of any kind. So, and I've tried to focus on this one, that the education apps and platforms while they are there, even in the public schools, the less than 50% children have complete access to the way education is being provided. And it is the government schools which are totally out. So while we talk about technology for all, but we see a new digital divide that has emerged in the country. And sadly, it is going to increase further if our dependence on this kind of education is going to be more and more through the online platforms. So the bridge between the government and the private schools, affordable access, building teaching platforms and capabilities, and adequate capacities. Now, while we build the capacity is a major issue, because we have seen that the capacity is not enough. And when I say capacity, it is both in terms of affordability and availability, that everybody can be entitled to education through the online mode. In fact, there's a very interesting Brookings paper which is quoting a UNESCO study that out of 188 countries which are closed, in 155 billion people are impacted. And only less than 25% low-income countries are providing any remote learning. Any remote learning, which is one-way broadcast through TV and radio teaching. Whereas 90% of the high-income countries provide online learning capabilities or opportunities. And in the low-income group, only 36% have access to the internet. Now, when we say internet, it is mere access or appropriate bandwidth, now, which is a challenge. In a country like India, for example, 4G, which probably should be giving us about 50 Mbps speed, we find that in most of the places in this country, the 4G speeds are only 6 Mbps. So which will show you the kind of challenge which we have in terms of access. Now, coming back to the cybersecurity challenges, as I said, we are a country supposedly an IT superpower, and I'll come to that later. We have been dependent upon American platforms, all American platforms. I don't have to list, but whether it is Microsoft, Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, Telegram, cloud services, Amazon, all of these, and Netflix and Amazon Prime and so on. Encryption technology is also coming from the US. So we've been comfortable, cozy, and using all of that. And then suddenly 5-7 years ago, we see the emergence of TikTok, Help, Daily Hunt, etc. from China. And you know, Daily Hunt, for example, even during the Doklam border dispute at that time, Daily Hunt was suppressing all the news in India about China. So all the Indian media news, which Daily Hunt was suppressing. And then Zoom today is at the heart of work from home and distant teaching rooms. So one particular author said that Zoom is the king of quarantine economy. And so when the entire world was moving into quarantine, Zoom was coming into the center stage. And it is still something which Trump is concerned about in the US. And we in the country are trying to do something to create our own platforms. So we have to appreciate that cybersecurity is integral to technology, and more so when we are increasing our reliance on technology. So data is the key, data transfer is the key, and data localization. Again, big question mark whether data localization is actually required. There's a divergence of views between different parts of the world. We have to see that our own apps, where do they stand? And how do we actually make them move forward in terms of adoption? Now, you see this, and I'm sure all of us hear this and will feel very happy about it. And we have reason to, because as an IT sector, Indians have been recognized the world over as people who are hardworking, intelligent, who can create and shape things. And we are proud that we have global companies which are headed by Indians. But then, yes, so we are selling services, application services, some $140, $150 billion a year, maybe touching $200 billion this year. But if you look at the scenario, we have no general purpose apps, not even email, no messaging, no search, no news. At the same time, we present ourselves as a huge market to any of the providers. And it is US apps which have been dominating: Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, and many others. And China very quietly got into this about starting with 5 years ago. TikTok, Zoom, Help. And there are applications which are developed by what is known as the BAT companies in China: Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent. Some others have also joined. But they're still known as BAT. And they develop applications under the government patronage. Then they implement in China. And then the same things they come out and implement a country like India. In fact, they were the first to come up with social media apps in non-English, Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, all of those platforms. They started doing that much before any of us thought about that. So the startup funding, which again, China has been doing in our country. So the platforms are there. And our concern, as I said, is from the law enforcement angle, both from privacy and national security. And most important is the fake news. Fake news as a subject, which once in a while earlier, and we know some of the mainline media can also provide fake news, but then at least they are accountable. But in this, the fake news is something which travels within a millisecond. It travels the entire world. Election campaigns, as I said, they can endanger democracy. And we have seen earlier example of in the US Cambridge Analytica case through Facebook, both in the previous US elections and part of the Indian elections also. And data has been transferred through these applications to servers in China, US, etc. So the question is that, should India not have its own social media platforms? Because they are going to generate more and more data. And if we are watching TV today, we find that any crime, any murder, any upheaval, any social media unrest which happens, any things which happen in the country, it has its digital footprints, whether in the form of mobile or CCTV footage and so on. And this kind of footage, WhatsApp chats and so on, then they end up being stored somewhere else outside of India. And we do not know what shape the social media platforms will take in future. It is something which is evolving. Today we have social media messaging applications, are messaging numbers which are 10 times more than the emails that we share. So the new people on the mobile, those who are getting onto the internet platforms, they have never seen emails. They're just using messaging. For them, that is the entry point. They were born into messaging. So through messaging they are using, and messaging where they are stored. And they are huge data mines which can be used by machine learning applications, AI algorithms, and so on. And at the same time, the platforms implement encryption. And encryption under the privacy protection part can be used as a tool to deny access. So our law enforcement agencies have to go a long way. So see, the question is that we can take the example of, for example, Rediff Mail, a private developer, which failed to click in the country. And some of the messaging platforms also, one or two emerged, which have failed to click in the country. Because we are an open democracy and we can't stop, unlike China. We can't build a firewall saying that, okay, Google cannot come here, search cannot do this, and use that time to build our own technology, reverse engineering or whatever. And which is what has happened over the last 7-8 years in China, but not in this country. It is just not possible. You have so many social media, civil society, NGOs who will start jumping that the government wants to control. So all those things come into picture as a noisy social democracy. So see, the question is not whether it's a technology issue. This technology is no longer big deal. Technology platforms can be built, but it becomes a market challenge. How do you get adoption of these platforms? And the key point I would like to make is that we do not know how technology will evolve, how social media will transform, and how more and more AI, ML, and data analytics and analytics tools will get merged into this. So we move on to the regulation of social media for privacy protection, national security. Now, there are no solutions which are emerging anywhere in the world. It is not that India is lagging behind. Europe is trying to do through GDPR. America has tried. So it is a mismatch between overall technology and civil society need for regulation. So it is a technology which is an upstart technology, innovative technology, but we don't know how to really handle it. But at the same time, it has now shown its new usefulness to fight the pandemic. So it is in this context that I said that we should look at Make in India. Obvious issues, hardware, networking, security, China, networking technology, social media, apps, cybersecurity, all of this. And I will not get into numbers. We know that we are importing most of the platforms. So that is not the point. What I have done is to make the focus in 5 areas for economic and national security. So there are different ways of looking at it, but the view which I'd like to present is this. The first is the hardware for processing and storage of data with the compute capabilities, cloud data centers with security devices and software. And if some of you are following the news, last week, IBM divided itself into 2 companies. Cloud computing, IBM has spun off as an independent company. Now, it should show the importance. It's a $120 billion company, and it is now going to be in 2 companies because they see business in cloud computing. So we have to look at, first thing is the hardware for processing and storage of data with compute capabilities and cloud data centers. Second is the devices which are connected to networks. Mobile phones, smart devices for industries, homes, CCTV cameras for security and surveillance, health monitoring, education platforms. Just a random thing. I mean, industrial devices are going to be much more. Tomorrow when we are connected, robotized processes and so on, they are going to be even overtaking the IT usage by human individuals. So third is the underlying networks with bandwidths, 4G and 5G. Adequate bandwidth to cater to apps, emerging apps, which require ultra reliability and low latency, and IoT devices for industrial apps and so on. And then, as I said, the bandwidth should be such, and the devices which are in number 2, they should be such that we should bridge the digital divide, not create more digital divide. So that has to be the objective of the country. And the fourth is the apps part, where as a nation we are good at, although we have not captured the imagination of any part of the world. And we have to remember that, yes, even in the apps part, China is beating us everywhere almost. So apps with AI that drive the digital economy. It is what China has innovated, what is known as super apps. So which means that you enter a super app, whether on Tencent or Baidu or Alibaba. So the objective is that that super app will provide you all services that are conceivable of any kind: transportation, ticketing, ordering food, e-commerce, hotel, anything. So that is a concept which they have created and which the Western world is trying to adopt, and which in some way our countries have started doing also. That Paytm, for example, Paytm Mall, this, that, they are trying to integrate into one. So it is beginning to happen. So entertainment, video streaming, gaming. Gaming is another area where the market is really, really huge. And online education for our social equality, we need video conferencing, telemedicine, agriculture is another huge area. Every area that, in fact, it is us, we have to decide and prioritize and then invite the developers and so on, that you develop and we will actually implement. So the fifth is the security of data, devices, and infrastructure. So we have the underlying hardware, then the devices which connect, and the network layers below that, and the apps right at the top, and then the entire spectrum from bottom to top has to be fully secure. So security of data, devices, and infrastructure, both for the national infrastructure and national security, as well as individuals' privacy. And it also leads to economic security. So when we come to the trust issues in global supply chain and technology imperatives, I have tried to group here and said that in red, which I have put here, that for the basic hardware, we must manufacture some of these independent of China. I am not saying that we should build semiconductor factories from scratch. We have learned the hard way that there are things which we cannot do. So we need to decide, for example, when the clouds are emerging, so what is it that we should be doing? Can we look at some of the cloud servers which we can build? And when we say build, I'm once again not saying that we build every component of that. We will rely on the global supply chain, but the chain could be, for example, it could include, say, Samsung. It may include Intel. So we have to look at our geopolitical problem in this area and who are our major adversaries, and then build our supply chain in such a manner that we remain independent of that group. So second is productivity platforms and AI and machine learning apps. Now, I will not re-enumerate the areas, e-commerce, payment, and so on, health, education. Now, these are applications on which I strongly feel that India must develop its own entire suite. This is not to say that we are boycotting others. It is to say that we consciously start developing. For example, in digital payments, we have done innovation. Certain things have emerged. UPI is a great example, and India is leading. So we have to look at health and agriculture in a big way, and education. To my mind, these are three key areas that we should be looking at. And fourthly, as being a strong entertainment industry and Bollywood as a soft power, we should be looking at video streaming and build our own apps and app platforms equivalent to Netflix and so on. And it is not we are talking of today. Let us be looking at for the next 5 to 10 years. So we have to plan that this is something which is here to stay and expand more and more. How do we do that? So this is one area where I would like to emphasize that India must develop. And third, I come to security products and services and testing cyber labs. You'll probably be shocked that we have no test cyber labs in the country which can test products and which are coming. So we have to take on face value whether the product is coming from Cisco, Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia. We have no labs, and we've been talking about it endlessly, but we have to build the test labs, and they should have the capability of the emerging standards, 3GPP and so on, for the 5G platform. And of course, encryption products, services, all of this, we have to see that what we should be doing. So some of these we need to develop, the entire suite. This is not to say that the government can dictate. It is the industry can come forward because industry knows most as to what is required in the market, what is a missing element, and then how the government can help in that area. So government can help in terms of funding and committed usage of that. Because what happens in the government, we say that, okay, the product should be in Gartner's quadrant 4. which means all startup products in the country you exclude. And I'm telling you on the basis of experience, because I've sat on multiple committees in the government, from DSCI also. And we have tried to say this, that is the government should exclude this part. So how do you, in the US also, for example, when the Army or Air Force gives some funding to the private sector for developing a particular product or a service, then they go back and implement that. So during the implementation, there could be changes and improvements. But after that, the product belongs to the company. It is not that if the government says, I have given you $2 million, the product will belong to me. So this mindset has to change. That is, government is funding, and then let the industry go and exploit it. And for the industry, that product or service, they should have a global market in view as per the international standards. We are not developing any new products as per our own standards. Remember that. That is a big mistake, because India is not the market. Global products will come and dominate. What Huawei has done is participated in the global standards and dominated the 3GPP to develop standards. And developing standards, they have been a part of that, and then they come back and manufacture the products. So, and as I'm saying that, we should look at some of the areas, niche areas, and in that we take the lead. And the next point is the social media apps. As I said, we do not know how this future social media app is going to be. So we are going to be forever dependent on the apps which are existing right now, and they will continue to exist. And they will metamorphose into new ways of delivering services, which we do not know. So unless we have platforms right now and we know how the things are moving, then we keep changing. And remember, this is that our local languages, 521 million compared to 199 users in English in 2017. This is a KPMG study and Google jointly together. And we could see that Google developing all translation apps, multiple languages and so on. So as a nation, do we decide that we will permanently keep using that? Or we will have some focus in some area? And we have to see from the viewpoint of always 10 years from now, not today. So I'm moving on to a next topic now. Moni, I have taken a lot of time, but if you permit me another 10 minutes.
Please carry on, because it is a powerful lecture that people are listening and watching. So, please carry on.
I want to touch upon AI, cybersecurity, some 2-3 areas I'd like to focus on. Okay.
Please.
So, okay. So now, if you look at the artificial intelligence scenario, there are many reports which have come out. That is, the volume of data is very large. I will not get into numbers again. Algorithms are better. And as we know, machine learning means that you have an algorithm and more data and it trains better. So it gives more useful answers. But then we do need experts with high-level skills using the algorithms, training or creating our new neural platforms and so on for deep learning. And they have emerged again from the gaming. Some of the Chinese programs could beat the best human intellect in some of the games. Not just chess, but in the bigger board game of China. So the third thing which has been added is the availability of powerful computing capacity. So computing chips have become more and more graphics processing unit with parallel processors, which are 40 to 80 times faster. And if you look at Google, it has a tensor processing unit and it has a developer NVIDIA. And Apple has come up with a similar thing as a dedicated chip for AI on devices. So what they have done is they have ensured that the cost of high performance computing has fallen significantly and continues to fall. And what they are going to do, and already done, is that they are moving all these into the cloud platform. So they will make this available to us to the entire world. So the trend will continue. So more and more users will come, and their business model will be such that they will capitalize on it. So compute power available on clouds. And so the question will be on accessing data for training machine learning. And the country will have to create skills and talent. So 3 points. And while the volumes of data are there, we have to focus on creating skills and maybe initially leverage the compute capability in the cloud platforms. But the key challenge from the governance angle is that who holds the data? So the current example is that Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, and so on, they hold the entire data. And so data sharing challenges for organizations and privacy security issues, they are there. And they are doing it for a particular profit. So as I said earlier, we are digitizing more and more applications. And I gave an example of MSMEs, which they will create maybe if the 40% of those MSMEs are digitized. Like you see in the case of Reliance Jio, if all the Kirana stores are actually connected, some 1.3 crore Kirana stores, imagine the kind of data which will be generated. So that is the digitization of MSMEs. But there are key policy issues on how is the data owned and who is the owner. In the law that we are proposing, we are putting another thing called data fiduciary and not the old world of controller and processor. So something on which the debate is still on. So is there any data that we can put in open data? When the data, huge amount of data is available as open data, then a startup company can create an AI app on top of it, a useful app for the country. For example, it could be a health app. It could be a particular disease app or a particular education app. So this could be created if the huge amount of data is available. So how do we create open data? Because open data will create additional value for the AI training programs. So open data, it is not that we want open data sitting in files and registers. They have to be machine readable and in standard formats. And then we have to look at the data and present in such a manner that there are no risks of privacy, security, and confidentiality. Public organizations, government, for example, owning all land records, health records in public hospitals and so on. It's a huge data, but not being used. And it is a fertile ground for AI and machine learning applications. So how should this be made open? So there are examples. Elsewhere in the world, UK, for example, they have created an open data institute. And hundreds of businesses in banking, agriculture, sports, they are now willing to share data. So there are many examples within the country also. They want to share data, but they do not know how and where and in what particular manner. And another important point here is that if you build an AI machine learning program on this data, the private companies hide the algorithms on which the results are announced. That is, the AI program has given this decision, but then they will not receive the, reveal the black box based on which the inference has been decided. So explainability is an important point which the public requires, which the government requires. So this kind of open data, if there is, then probably the algorithms which the startups will create or others will create, they will be explainable because the data is made available to them for free or for whatever. And then we can look at sensitive data also, which part can actually be accessed in what particular manner. So it's a challenge. So as previous challenges, these three in terms of data, skills, and platforms. And here, who holds the data, whether an open data institute can be set up for public platforms to share. So from this, I will now jump on to, it's a problem which I have defined, and there are solutions also, but as a nation, we have to adopt and move forward. And now I'm coming to the network bandwidth part. We are all talking about 5G. It's basically mobile broadband much faster speeds, and machine-to-machine communication is possible, and ultra-reliable, low latency communications. So we can't simply say that this is esoteric as a country, we don't need it, but we have to be ready for the future. And suddenly it is going to be there with applications which will be driven by other countries. So here we are talking about peak download of 1 Gbps compared to the 60 Mbps, which is committed by 4G. Latency of 1 millisecond compared to 40 to 60 millisecond that we get in 4G. But India, as I said, in 4G, we are getting only 6 Mbps compared to the promised 40 Mbps. Another interesting point is that our country will be covered by 4G by 2024 only to the extent of 82%. And 5G will be only 10%. So we have a long way to cover. And technology, 5G, I would like to draw the attention of the viewers to 2-3 important things. That is, 5G is predicted to be a general purpose technology. It is going to be a GPT like the printing press, electricity, steam engine, telegraph, and the internet. So it is going to have transformative effect on the individual, industry, and society. And the key point is that, as I said, there are 7 billion people connected, but then the devices, industrial devices, and so on, which will be hundreds of billions, which will be connected to the internet. The density is going to be huge in specific areas. So 5G is supposed to be an inflection point shifting from the consumer to the industry in terms of connectivity. So this is a point to be borne in mind, that the industrial process automation will change majorly in the next 5 to 10 years. Some of the figures, we are talking about some $12 trillion of global economic output on account of 5G in the next 15 years. And in the 5G global value chain, we are talking about some $3.5 trillion and 22 million jobs. And these are global. And globally, the companies are investing $200 billion every year in technology, network, and applications, leveraging 5G. And 5G will fuel sustainable long-term growth to global real GDP, and which is going to be almost like $5 trillion to real GDP from 20 to 2035. And the sad part is that India is not among the top 7 countries which are investing in 5G R&D, either in the rollout of networks or in launching use cases. And as I said earlier, use cases give us first mover advantage. While we talk about as a target that we'll grow to $1 trillion USD digital economy, and will be a $5 trillion economy by 2024, can we ignore the growth or delivery of 5G? Can we ignore? So if we ignore that, it will be at peril to our own country and our own parameters. So we have issues like technology, radio spectrum, network infrastructure, end user equipment availability. Field trials are yet to take place. Equipment vendors are still in the process. But this is a case in point. Reliance Jio is different from other networks because it started in 2016 as a 4G service with no burden of 2G, 3G, unlike other operators. It was a pure IP network. And they are building on that, and they claim that they are ready with the 5G platform, which is totally built around software. So they are virtualizing the core network with control plane, user plane separated, and cloudifying the entire core network, and ready for 5G trials, whereas South Korea tops today. And Jio is in the process working with both Cisco, OpenAI's, and device availability. So they are working for the device development. This again, as I said, connecting devices within the country manufacturer, this is a case in point. Because today 70% of the smartphones, they come from China. So on 5G, if we are launching with Reliance, and Reliance builds these platforms or these devices with Samsung or others, then that will be a big start which will come to the country. So Jio target end-to-end 5G from scratch, and they are setting the right target to be an exporter of 5G systems, which means, as I said earlier, the global standards you have to build around that, and within the country you implement, learn from that, and then go to the world. And as a network, they are the only network in the world which have built technology. Other networks have not built any technology. They have simply used technology from technology vendors like Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei, and others. But they have entered into partnership with Google, Facebook, Intel, Qualcomm, and Rakuten Japanese Mobile. So personally, I think that is the way to go. So I will end my talk with the Cyber Power Index, skipping the slides. Essentially, recently published about 2 weeks ago. That is on the cyber power and cyber security. Countries have been ranked, and the parameters used are surveillance, monitoring, strength and enhancing national cyber defenses, controlling and manipulating information, and so on. They have distinguished between the intent of a country and the actual capability. And we as a nation, we know that our intent is very high, but then our capability comes down to the floor level. So this gap between the two has been at the focus of assessing countries' cyber strategy. And the India score is sadly at the level of at the 21st level in the world. So this is my last slide. Some key recommendations based on whatever I have covered in terms of dependence on ICT, digitization of processes, manufacturing, global supply chains, national security, and so on. And all the ICT being dual use technology, both for the civilian sector and the same technology for the military and other intelligence operations. So some of the key recommendations, the first one I'd like to see is that we build open data platform, Linux-based OS for both 4G and 5G mobile. Huawei, after being denied Google Android, has built Hume OS. It is Android-based, but they have built their own operating system. And they're trying to build a community of developers around it. And then software developed network and network functions virtualization, which goes in the 5G. And we are a software powerhouse as a nation. We should develop this indigenously. Radio access network should be on open source. And 5G spectrum, I personally feel that we should give it free to telcos for 2 years to develop cost-effective apps for our requirements. Health, education, agriculture, maybe one or two other social areas which are important. Let them develop. Otherwise, the spectrum cost is so huge, it becomes prohibitive for the companies to develop apps. China did this. China gave it free for 2 years. And in our case, when we go for the spectrum auction makes it unviable for anybody. Even Europe has been trying to see that the auction is a wrong policy. We should change that. And then the fifth is the development of cybersecurity products, specifically identified. Encryption products. Can we look at something innovative a startup has been talking about? Can we encrypt the transport layer by our own products? Entire transport layer in the country, let us encrypt with our own encryption product. So PKI based our own technology. Apps does not need re-emphasizing as per our India's requirements. Social media apps, I strongly feel, given the challenge it is presenting to governance, to democracy itself, to crimes and so on, we should build some platforms. I do not know. In the paper which I wrote on PDPU website, I have suggested that maybe some NIC or CDAP, but then it should be developed by the private sector completely, and they should be the ones, they should actually popularize it. And the government should do some level of hand-holding. Otherwise, with the free Gmail and free Facebook and so on, we don't stand a chance. How do we do that? So it is not a technology issue, it's a market issue, it's a policy issue. And the government has to grapple it from the front. VC platform, most important for all of this, education and health and so on. And education in particular, teaching tools, online platforms. And finally, on data innovation, data centers, open data sharing, norms, innovation, and computing platforms. So computing platforms, how do we create our own? Although we buy, but then some hardware specific and some products which we need to develop as handheld devices and so on. So we need to identify and actually implement. Moni, I have taken longer than I should have. So sorry about that. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. It was a very insightful and awakening address. Can you close down? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, I have done that.
So, thank you very much for your very insightful and awakening address. I strongly feel, after listening to you for more than 1 hour 30 minutes, which I have been hearing your forceful speech for the last 35 years since I worked under you, and still we echo the same feeling that how indigenously India should move forward. It reminds me the famous speech of Swami Vivekananda. He said it, awake, arise, stop not till the goal is reached. This is what today your 1 hour 30 minutes of speech talked about it. That we have problems, we have challenges, we have advantage, we have human resources, but how to move forward. And you started with that, as I rightly said it, that you talked about strategic nature of ICT products and services. In that, you rightly said it that digital economy has contributed more to their national GDPs than any other sector. Digitalization of businesses, e-commerce, banking, industrial work processes, education, health, agriculture, governance, and etc., has increased. Growth of jobs, computing platforms, machine learning, artificial intelligence using data generated by devices, Internet of Things, and data-driven innovation is the key to the growth of economy and jobs. It is a strategic nature of ICT products and services which you clubbed everything under this, but the way in which you explained step by step with the focus and what India should do is very important. I hope and I wish that if our 4,500 engineering colleges who teach computer science and electronics, Indian Institute of Science, IITs, National Institute of Technologies, Indian Institute of Information Technology, International Institute of Information Technology, 1,500 universities, 18,000 non-engineering colleges who teach computer science and so on and so forth. The students of 14 lakhs students who learn engineering subjects in the country. It's a very important talk today under our platform international webinar series on open digital technology towards self-reliant India, Atmanirbhar Bharat. We can do it, but why we are not doing it? So it is a call to every researcher, every faculty members, every students and every technical departments of both the government of India and the state government and industries, private and public, to look into it. They have to do a soul searching. And you have also given a complete SWOT analysis with respect to the vulnerability analysis, where we are heading towards. To, in short, we would like to, inform the audience that when you talked about India is a very big market for data analytics, then without AI and machine learning and deep learning, how we are going to monetize the data which we, have it with us, through digitalization process. If it is not in standard format, if it is not in machine readable format, and if it is also not based on AI enablement with the machine learning and deep learning, it is an exercise, a problem which you have given to almost all engineering students, irrespective of any discipline which they are enrolled for their graduation study. And this is a very important, this one line of action alone can take India to put it in a different platform. Because India is known for its own ancient, technological institution like Takshila and Nalanda. When we didn't have technology, these are all world university centers existed in India. Today we have technology, so why can't we, move towards in a very big manner? Then also you talked about standardization of products and services, where 7 groups, way back in 2005, to facilitate standardization, and standards in e-governance, government set up 6, committees to work on these, standards for e-governance services. As a Deputy Director General e-governance standards in NIC, I was heading it, and I felt the need for one more committee. Today, courts has been ICT enabled, but information system is not legally enabled. An information system is an economic activity, and economic activity has to stand in the court of law. So, feeling the necessity of this committee, so I have written to the then secretary, then additional secretary, electronics and information technology, to have that committee established, and the standard committee on legal enablement of information system was established, and by the former, the judge of Karnataka, High Court. But after my, and by 2008, I was, I've been, the standardization activities has been taken away from me, and then this committee never was given any support. But it is when you talked about standardization of product and services, legal enablement of, the information system is very important. And through this, lecture series, I would like to, impress upon the present, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology to consider, activate the 7, standards group for e-governance, which is very important above all the legal enablement of information systems. Then you talked about data-driven economy. As a 2015, report you quoted that it generated about something like $10 billion, but 2020 it's going to be $50 billion. It is something like that. It is that in agriculture sector, I work on like that how to generate wealth from waste. the data is getting generated. And one project which I have initiated now, that India grows banana in 8 lakhs hectare, 237, crore plants, lakhs plants. But the thing is that, the thing is one plant to clear that, the farmer has to spend 5 rupees, but it can generate a wealth of 50 rupees. So every year from this waste, we can generate 13,000 crores for the farmer. So this is where, and then banana fiber, banana textile, banana paper, banana currency paper, and the banana currency paper, which has the lifespan of 100 years. So this is, the figure which you are given, that data driven, we can generate $50 billion by 2020. It is that, we should generate from waste to wealth. Then you also given another very important figure. Artificial intelligence based data driven is to raise GDP by 1.3 trillion in 2025. And, it is a very important global data flows. We should monetize it. India is a digitalized economy. And this is a very important thing. And the third one, which you talked about, is that global supply chain, where you have spent about more than 25 minutes to stress on global supply chain. And you talked about ICT products, which are China, Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea. And also you talked about that, the society 5.0, industry 4.0, and, these e-leadership. Now, every, person, whether it is work in industry or agriculture, through artificial intelligence, they have to acquire the capability of e-leadership. That is more important. You talked about, and, this is an area where, from the Center for Industry 4.0, Technology, Studies and Applications, we are promoting Industry 4.0 technology in 3,500 urban clusters of SMEs, 20,000 rural clusters of SMEs and KBICs on building up capability and competence building in use of technologies. The first, pilot project which, we have initiated from the center, that's called SITSA of the university in Coimbatore, Rhodesia, which has got about something like 10,000 members, which is the biggest in Asia. Then you also talked about, that innovative applications, just, human resources are learning to work with, automated and robotized process. ICT for economic growth, which is generating job growth and gaining technology supremacy in cyberspace. Then you talked about national security, cyber security, and also very nicely said it that the trust in global supply chain and intense global debates on control and the trust in nations. COVID-19 situations, you have, you are informed to the audience that how it has facilitated e-commerce, e-health, and e-education. And this is a time for race for technology supremacy. And you said it, there has to be a focus on indigenous development. You also given an action plan, what India should do that. And you also, said that work from home has become a new normal now. And you also that is a need for core ICT infrastructure, networks, and apps for cybersecurity. And in this connection, I would like to bring it to the notice of all the audience who are, attending this very important seminar. Recently, the National Security Advisor talked about that the need for digital solutions for digital assets, for data sharing between servers. He very nicely said it, when you, share data between servers and also towards, social media platform. Somebody hack it, somebody, makes it. And this is a very important thing that say how to bring in digital solutions for these digital assets on which India is growing. And we cannot be a technology adopter. You can't be a technology usage nation. When India is a superpower in IT, then our contribution from the other end, we have to generate wealth from the technology development. And for that, the example which we given in the last, that how Reliance Jio is now developed technology with the global partners. And they are going to be the technology exporter. This is an important message today to all the participants and also for the people who are working for Make in India under Atmanirbhar Bharat. And then you also said it very clearly that now because of that time, I will, one that I would like to confine to your recommendation that this is you said that India should do 5 these is in 5 areas. It is very important that it should get into that. This is a time to re-examine the Make in India program. Now, where you said it that in 5 areas India should focus. One is on hardware for processing and storage of data. This is an important area where almost all these IITs and NITs and IIITs. I always used to say in my presentation, talk and so on and so forth, every institute of national importance which receives heavy public funding has to be given one area of interest and product development for the next 10 to 15 years. If that institute is not in a position to develop, India should take a decision to close down that department. There is no other way. We cannot, sit and develop only papers for foreign media, foreign, audience. And Indian students, aspiring students, young dynamic demography also would like to know what IIT, what NIT, what IIITs, what Indian Institute of Science and Education Research institutions are developing technology for India. For this, young demography to get benefit out of it, these 5 areas where you have very clearly given, it has become an 5 pillars of technology development in India. And that's why I termed it in the beginning that, your insightful and awakening address will lead to a policy paper for submission to the government of India. And I would like to request, Dr. Kamalesh Kumar Bajaj today is the keynote speaker, to get associated with the Center for Informatics Development, solutions and applications to facilitate in framing up this policy paper for submission to the government. And we worked in the system, government system, in our entire career, career. And this is our contribution payback to the society. Hardware for processing and storage of data, and these devices connected to the network. And he has given a way forward that why can't India on par with Japan, China, Korea, South Korea, and Taiwan, and national network with huge bandwidth. And many of our national networks, the claim which they made today, Dr. Bajaj has come out with the statistics that how our 4G network gives the speed to the people. And this is very important. And emerging apps with artificial intelligence enabled with machine learning and deep learning. And this has to be made possible and available in 22 constitutionally recognized languages. Then fifth one he talked about is that security of data, devices, and infrastructure. That this is what the National Security Advisor talked about. We need a digital solution for digital assets. And above all, he also voiced that we have to now, the time has come that how to bridge the digital divide which is taking place between public schools and the government schools. This cannot be allowed to go forever. This is, there has to be an immediate attention by the government, by the local bodies who run government schools, and it has to be done very effectively. Then he also talked about that, in 5G network focus, he talked about, the 5G technology network is critical to grow. And he talked about it is becoming a general purpose technology like printing press, electricity, water, and so on and so forth. It is transformative effects which is creating. It will generate global 5G value chain, and it is going to fuel the sustainable long-term growth to global real GDP. And he also very, said it that India is not among top 7 countries in investing 5G R&D. He also said it that the 5G steps which is taking place in India, where he quoted an example of Reliance Jio network. But important thing which on the last slide, the slide which talked about, we recently quoted National Cyber Power Index 2020, which is released from United States, that too by a Chinese academic institute. He said it very clearly on 2 parameters, intent and capability. Is it intent in India is high, and we have to look into the capability which we have achieved. So the key recommendation he has given 11. He has given 11 very carefully worded, that Linux-based OS for 4G and 5G network, and software-driven network, and NFV, ran on open source, 5G spectrum free to telecom companies. It will be a major policy, open policy, and if this is done, and India will be number 1, this software enabled telecom network. And it is he's very nicely said it. He said it, the America did it for only for 2 years. China, many other countries did it for only 2 years. And let us also adopt for 2 years. And then he also talked about the cyber security and the data centers and so on and so forth. Encryption products. Why don't we encrypt the transport layers? That is also very, he did it very particularly, that you don't have to encrypt any other layers except the transport layers, and AI enabled with machine learning and deep learning apps. And when are we going to develop social media apps in our local language? And above all, during COVID situation, the virtual meetings, virtual platform has made the government running. And why can't we develop easy platforms? And he said it, 3 sectors will have an impact: education, health, and agriculture. I would like to remind the audience that the Shobhit University is the first university to set up 2 centers of excellence exclusively on agriculture, informatics, and e-governance research studies, first in the world, and also to launch MTech programs and BTech program and PG diploma in agriculture informatics, based on the work which I have done it as an technocrat from National Informatics Center in the IT in agriculture. The internet, blueprint which was given for IT in agriculture in 1995 and operationalized during this period up to 2013. So the thing is that, and also that in the doubling the farmers' income by 2022, headed by Dr. Ashok Dalwai, where I was associated with the committee for volume 12B, digital technology in agriculture, and volume 11, agricultural extension and ICT to take the knowledge to every farmer, every farm. In that report, volume 12B, chapter 10, we have given 7 mission mode projects, for, digital technology in agriculture. If this is operationalized, the entire agriculture will be digitalized, which will generate a startup in every panchayat, 2.25 by panchayat to startups with IT in agriculture. This is a very big thing to facilitate for 14 crore farming community. So, sir, you have very nicely, identified 3 sectors: education, agriculture, and health. Health is another sector, which is not only public health is involved. 80% of the disease which comes from animal, coronavirus is one. In 2012, I was instrumental, involved in networking about 7,032 locations in the country to monitor national animal disease reporting systems. If we would like to reduce the budget for human health, who receives disease from 85% of the animal, we have to have an one health, eco health, including human health, plant health, animal health, soil health, water health, and fisheries health. This is what I have been voicing it. I have redefined health informatics on this fashion, and we also would like to launch a PG diploma in health informatics based on these 6 categories for the BSc biology students. And then you also talked about, that's data innovations and the data centers and open, and very nicely you said it that if you would like to bring in innovation, all the private sectors and public sectors and government data should be put it on open data platform based on standards and mission readable format, and every innovators can use this data platform to bring in innovations and products. So this is a very important address today from the bottom of our heart, and especially my heart, that I thank you very much. And on behalf of the Honorable Chancellor, Kanwar Shekhar Vijendra, he is the Chancellor of 2 universities, Shobhit Institute of Engineering Technology and Shobhit University, Gango, and the faculty members of both the universities and the 4 centers of excellence where I was instrumental in establishing after my retirement in 2013, namely Center for Agricultural Informatics, E-Governance Research Studies, Center for Agribusiness and Disaster Management Studies, Center for Informatics Development Solutions and Applications, and Center for Industry 4.0 Technology Studies and Application. We thank you very much, and we thank all the audience and participants, students of both in India and abroad. And we please flew to this webinar series on every Saturday, 11:30 to 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Thank you very much. Good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Muni. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.